Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ratliff, your learning expert. I am super excited about today because today we are talking to parents. Yes, if you are a parent, you definitely want to listen and tune in because I'm going to be giving you some practical tips on how to help your child to focus, right? So we are in this pandemic. A lot of us are going to be sending our students or our child back to school via online learning. So I want to give you some tips on how you can help your child to focus. And this is applicable to not just online learning, but to literally every day tasks. So if you have a child that seems to lose focus and to lose their attention span is very low, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can support them so that they can complete their tasks and get things done the right way, right? So the first one is have a set routine. So this is extremely difficult simply because in this environment, we are entrusted to complete tasks without necessarily being in front of whoever it is that we're accountable for. So for instance, if you're a student, you are not necessarily directly in front of your teacher. If you are a parent and you work from home, you have to self-regulate and push yourself pretty much to get things done because you are the one that is driving the progress, right? So it's the same way with students. Even in a remote environment, they still have to have a routine. So for instance, it's not sleeping in, until 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They need to be up. They need to, have a set time that they eat their breakfast. They need to have a set time that they actually sit down for learning, a set time for homework. That routine has to be embedded in them so much to where it almost becomes automatic. The last thing that you want is to throw a child's routine off. And some of us with students going back, they might be going back to school only 2 days a week. That means that the remaining 3 days, they need to self-regulate and have a specific schedule that they follow, and actually follow it so that they can actually move forward with their studies and whatever it is that they're supposed to accomplish. So even though the teacher might say, okay, I'm on, the Zoom lesson, on Zoom at from 3 to 4, for the rest of the day and the days in which they're not engaged with the teacher, they still need to have a set schedule and a set number of deliverables in terms of what they need to do during that time. So that's the first thing. They have to have a set routine, a routine that is not in place and not structured, that will only lead to more issues. The second one is you have to limit distractions. So when you're at home, literally there's so many distractions. There's the TV, there's, the refrigerator. We have to limit those distractions. And I'm not saying to take that stuff away, but it can't be where the TV is on, where the radio is playing in the background. It has to mimic a learning environment as much as possible. So if you have multiple kids that are on the computer, perhaps one can be in one section of the house, the other can be in the other section of the house, so that there's not an overlap of conversation to where students' thinking is thwarted and that they can't concentrate on what they have to do. So that's the second one. The third one is, this is very important, is when you are working with your student and you're finding that they are not able to focus and they're not able to complete the task, a lot of the time it is a lack of confidence and a lack of understanding on what the task is. So for instance, for me, if I'm avoiding something, chances are I don't feel like I can do it, or, I don't feel super confident about it. I don't understand what's being asked of me. So the third one is explicit expectations, right? So explicitly stating what it is that a student or your child is supposed to do. Taking away the ambiguity, taking away the gray area of what could possibly be done, being very specific and providing step-by-step instructions. So for some children, you could say, go to your room and do your homework, right? They're going to go to your room. They're going to do their homework. For other students, you might have to say, Johnny, go to your room, turn off the television, turn on the lights, sit at your desk, open up your math book and do the problems that Miss Williams gave you for today. This is literally just a hypothetical scenario. Sometimes you have to be very explicit. How do you know that you've been explicit? When your child can actually repeat the directions back to you. So a good technique it would be to say, okay, now repeat exactly what I just said. Repeat what it is that I want you to do. If they can repeat it back in their own words, whether it's verbatim or not, as long as the message comes through, then that is an example of being explicit. If they can't repeat it and they can't tell you what it is they're supposed to do, chances are you have to go back to the drawing board and provide more context in regards to what they're supposed to do. If that doesn't work, the next step would be to actually model what it is that they're supposed to do. So we do this in the educational world where we, of course, tell students to provide direct instruction, and then there's something called guided practice where you are actually modeling what your child is supposed to do. So for instance, if you want them to complete a certain task, you have to do it first to show them how to do it, perhaps with a different example. Of course, with a different example. Don't do their work for them, but with a different example, actually modeling it out so they actually see an example of what it is they're supposed to do. So this will provide a visual representation, because we know that a lot of students are visual when it comes to learning, and it will take and diminish some of the ambiguity tied to the task. So that's the next one. The next one, and some students might need help with this if you have a student that is really distracted and really have a hard time processing things, and that's helping them to organize and chunk their thoughts. So for instance, if they're supposed to do something around the house, helping them to organize how they're going to do it. So instead of, just saying, okay, we're going to go, do our reading homework or do our science homework and things of that nature, being very explicit on chunking how we're supposed to do it. So we're going to take a stab at the reading homework first, and then we're going to go to math. But just so that they can have a way of processing what it is they're supposed to do, instead of looking at something that might seem monumental to them, even though, again, it might not be monumental to us, but for a second grader or a third grader or even a high schooler, looking at so much work and so many things to do can be a little overwhelming. So helping them to chunk their thoughts and chunk their time. And then the last one is when you have a student that has trouble focusing, a lot of the times adding a degree of accountability to it heightens the urgency to get it done. So for instance, having a specific deliverable whenever it is that they're supposed to have it done. So at 8 o'clock, when you're supposed to have your homework done, you're supposed to have your clothes laid out for the next day. These are the specific things that I am looking for when I come back to see perhaps if you've done exactly what you're supposed to do. So adding accountability by adding deliverables that students or your child is supposed to show you that exemplifies that the task has been done. So I hope that this has been helpful. If you need more tips for your child that might still be struggling with focus and not necessarily completing tasks and getting things done, please email me at support@drelenaratliff.com. You can also send me a message on Instagram, and you can also send me a message on Facebook. I would love to help you out. All right. Happy learning.